I am going to be talking tonight about trauma and your personality type. First of all, discussing how we react. All of us that experience trauma have some kind of reaction. We definitely don't usually respond because responding would be too measured. Instead, we react and we have good reason to. Everyone responds differently, and there are four common reactions, or most common, to trauma. The first is an emotional response where we have strong emotions: denial, fear, sadness, shame, helplessness, overwhelm. And then secondly is cognitively, where we have difficulty concentrating or focusing or are indecisive. Third, it affects us physically through exhaustion, insomnia, or somaticizing. And fourth, it affects us interpersonally, where we distrust, are often isolated, have difficulties with conflict or fear. So to summarize, the way we react to our traumatic event or series of events is always does encompass emotional, cognitive, physical, and interpersonal reactions. Some of what I was reading, individuals tried to separate those and say, well, some people have an emotional response and some people have a cognitive response. From my experience, I don't think that's true. I think we all react from all of those places. Even if the emotional response is freezing and feeling numb, that's still a different emotional reaction than what we usually have in our day-to-day. And cognitively, even if our thoughts are racing and we're trying to problem solve and find our way out through fleeing, that's affected. Physically, your body, we are animals, we are mammals, and so our bodies always respond to threats. And sometimes that is, high blood pressure, sweating, tension in our muscles, shallow breathing. And then interpersonally, when you are placed in a traumatic situation, you all know that it's incredibly difficult to then deal with our relationships in healthy ways. And so what many of us do is we compartmentalize so that we aren't needing to really experience up close and in our face the effects that this trauma has had. So we often compartmentalize the event, and then we'll say, oh, this happened to me, but today I'm fine. But we've really just compartmentalized this event in such a way that we're not dealing with it. It's an adaptive strategy, but it's not a very effective one. But there's good news. The good news is you are here today because you're curious about this topic. You have reached out for help because you are a survivor, quickly on your way to becoming a thriver. In fact, most of you listening to this right now are thrivers. You have moved from those survival fear places, from being in a full-blown PTSD threatened state, to looking for help, searching, embracing the help that shows up, and beginning to move from a place of how am I going to get through this to I'm not just going to get through this, I know I am, but on the other side of this, I'm going to be successful and thriving and happy and joyful and well-balanced. So not everyone develops long-term PTSD, anxiety, relationship issues, chronic dysregulation, or hypervigilance. These symptoms can be transient. And, many of the times we've been talking recently, I don't think I've emphasized that enough, because I've definitely wanted to really emphasize the seriousness of what you've been through, because it's easy to minimize and sort of rationalize what's happened. And physicians, especially because you're also highly intelligent, and nurse practitioners, PAs, those that have really devoted a lot of time and energy and money to elongated training, you really are good at using your intellect, your analytical skills to get through. And you may not really realize that the symptoms that you're sublimating or trying to push away can be transient. They don't have to be here forever. They're impermanent. Success indicators. There are 7 personality types in my research and in my experience that really do the best when it comes to dealing with trauma and healing trauma. The very first type is the creative. And we're going to go through each one of these types one by one, and you're going to see and hear and feel yourself on these slides, and that's exciting to me. So there's the creative, the purpose-driven, the strong or tough, the resourceful critical thinker, the optimistic grateful, the confident, and the directive take charge personality. So as you're listening, I am certain that some of you will say, well, I'm a little bit creative. I'm also pretty resourceful, and I'm optimistic and grateful. So, I'm really parts of 3 personality types that you're talking about. And that's true. We're all complex. And so embrace it. Don't try to limit yourself to just the attributes of one personality type, although one of these may resonate with you more than the others. Creative types. Number 1, these are the people that think outside the box and embrace the new. When you're creative, you're used to seeing something that not everyone can see. I have had many friends and some clients even who are artists or highly creative folks, and they'll look at something and say, oh, have you ever thought of, using that ribbon in this way with that painting to, dramatize? And I'm just like, what? Huh? I'm not sure what you're talking about. So even though I can be creative in terms of building content and when I'm musically connected, I'm not very creative when it comes to, your traditional artistic type. So, but creative types think outside the box, embrace the new, they improvise and adapt. They exhibit divergent thinking where they don't need to be one of the sheeple out there or one of the people who find rules that they are going to abide by. They're not color in the lines type of people. They exhibit divergent thinking. They use default, salient, and executive networks of the brain better than anyone else. And in fact, there's was a study done, and I have the link here at the bottom of the slide so that when you look at these slides later, you can actually copy and click on that link where it actually talks about the way that very creative people actually use their whole brain. We're used to talking about left brain, right brain, and especially physicians will say that to me a lot, like, oh, I'm so left brain, I'm so analytical. But creative types really light up the whole brain, and they use the default, salient, and executive networks very well. They all light up at once. They're expert creative problem solvers. And there's the link at the bottom of the slide. Then there are the purpose-driven types. They find meaning in most situations. They're passionate. They feel connected to others. They're highly motivated. They're inclusive versus exclusive. They are expert reframers. I'm definitely a purpose-driven type. I could resonate with each of these attributes. And so one of the things that can be frustrating to somebody who's very analytical is when someone like myself is talking from a place of the meaning and the purpose in life and how you can make, lemonade out of lemons, a glass half full person. Sometimes that can be annoying, as I've been told by my sons, because they don't feel that same way, or they look at the world differently. But in a traumatic situation, these are very good attributes to have. Strong types. Strong types know their inner strength. They are emotionally intelligent. And what emotionally intelligence is sort of AKA for common sense, being able to use deductive reasoning and, being able to use their observer self to analyze and reflect on a situation and apply emotional intelligence. They're people who embrace change because they feel strong, they feel powerful, change isn't threatening. They have great or pretty good boundaries. They don't need to be perfect, and they aren't afraid to make mistakes. And lastly, they're self-disciplined. So I'm sure there are people listening right now who say, yeah, I'm actually pretty strong. That describes me. I have a lot of inner strength. I'm emotionally intelligent. I'm not threatened by change. I used to have pretty good boundaries before the traumatic series of events. And the good news is, if this is your core self, your personality, when you are engaged in the healing process, on the other side, those attributes are often stronger. They are often even more highlighted, emphasized in your life, more easy to access. So even though you may be feeling like, well, at one time I was very strong or very creative, and I haven't felt strong or creative in a long time, hang in there with the healing process, because on the other side, it will all come back. It's like riding a bike. Resourceful types have excellent critical thinking skills, because they can, like the creative types, they can look at a situation and see what needs to happen. Now, creative types are more able to see what isn't there and apply some of their magic to make that more obvious, whereas a resourceful type has unlimited resources really inside themselves. They're like, what was that old show, MacGyver, who was always resourceful and putting duct tape on things and, disconnecting bombs with some, little thing like a rubber band and a stick. I don't know. Resourceful types are imaginative. They're open-minded. They're proactive and show great initiative. They find resources everywhere. Those are people that generally don't like to throw things away, because I could use that later, and if I can't use it, somebody else can. They are persistent, and they are dreamers. They also exhibit the characteristic of hope. So there are hope bearers. We really need resourceful types in the world, because they're what keeps the world going round. So what can be really shocking for someone who's experienced a one traumatic event or a series of events is you can begin to again feel that your resourcefulness is being chipped away, that you can't think clearly or access your brain in the same way, that you've lost your imagination, that you're a little bit closed off, that you aren't initiating because you're afraid. that resources may feel more limited, um, and that you may be afraid to dream or be hopeful. Well, the good news is, if you trust yourself and the fact that you are actively seeking to make dramatic changes in your life, um, and just bookmark the idea that that resourceful energy, that personality that you always exhibited from the time you were a little kid, will become more dominant again. It's just that you're in a in between place right now as you do your healing work. Optimistic types, these are the grateful, glass half full, realistic and factual, see life in shades of gray rather than black and white. They're flexible, dependable, they have a value system that works. It can be devastating for an optimistic type to be taken advantage of or exploited. And in that disillusionment, it can be tempting to embrace pessimism. But you know, it's almost impossible for a truly optimistic type to convert to pessimism because by nature, they are positive. And if you can reframe and look at your situation as an opportunity to use discernment in who you trust and in the decisions you make, then that optimism will begin to return in little bits and pieces. Discernment is a huge part of embracing an optimistic, more positive worldview. Doesn't mean you can't be realistic, but often the realists are people who struggle with negativity. Confident types. These are people who are comfortable listening as well as speaking. They aren't the people that need to be in the limelight, center of the stage. They are so comfortable with themselves that they are happy to listen to you and let you take the limelight because they choose the time that they speak carefully. And when they speak, they make sure they have something important to say because they're confident in who they are. Again, they also tend to be flexible, aren't afraid to ask for help. And you know, confident types aren't afraid to fail. Many times people project that confident people have never failed. You know, they're confident because they were born under a lucky star. Not true. Confident types have failed many, many times, but what they've learned is that they're resilient. I hate to use that word because I know so many of you have had resilience and resiliency training used against you. But in this context, I'm just talking about people knowing that they can screw up, that they can make poor choices, that they can make mistakes that take them all the way to failure, and that they can rise again and try again and be successful the next time. They don't easily take offense because they are comfortable in their own skin and they're great team players. So I really want to encourage the confident types in the group who may hold themselves back because you don't want to appear overly overly confident or arrogant. You know, lots of times confident types will say to me, I want to exhibit humility. Well, you know, that doesn't mean that you have to deny your high sense of self-regard. Yes, I said high sense of self-regard. That's what I wish for each of you, that you really are at a place where you are so confident and value yourself so much that you're not afraid to have a high sense of self-regard, high self-worth. And then confident types, of course, exhibit decisiveness. They are often the movers and the shakers. Directive types. Now, some people can misinterpret a directive type as being controlling. And so I want to just reassure the directive types that it's okay to be in charge. Being in charge and taking charge is different than being controlling. Um, Often, people who are controlling really are very fearful. And because they're so fear-based, they need to have control of all the pieces. Whereas directive types aren't afraid to delegate and to include others. So they know they can be trusted with control. They trust themselves. They ask questions first. They don't just jump in like a bull in a china closet who does a lot of damage. No, they ask questions first. They're very responsible. They see the strengths in others and really help to bring those strengths out. In fact, directive types often inspire others. They are able to maintain the structure, and they value safety for all. And then I think I've already mentioned this, they inspire others. So we need those take charge directive types. If someone has shamed you or called you controlling or a micromanager, I want you to take a step back from that. And as you deal with the fear in your life and some of the fear and anxiety that has come as a result of the trauma you experienced, as you get a handle on that, as you heal that, your fear and anxiety will diminish. And you can again embrace the fact that, yes, I like to be the man in charge. I like to be the woman in charge. That's who I am. Oh, it looks like I pushed the wrong mouse key. And so we went through that slide again. So maybe somebody really needed to see those directive type attributes go across the screen again to be reassured. So finally, I always end with the post-traumatic stress cycle, which includes flashbacks of memories that, unwanted memories that really take you over at the most inopportune times, a flooding of emotion, feeling triggered. This often leads to avoidance, almost always leads to avoidance. After avoidance, you have arousal and reactivity. Then you begin to notice cognitive changes, and then finally mood. The good news, especially for those of you that have been working with me for a while, is that you can disrupt this cycle at any time. And the way that you can do that is by listening to some of the previous videos and really applying some of those suggestions in terms of movement and redirection and asking for help and staying physically in tune with what's going on in your body. Absolutely the PTSD cycle over time can get sort of fade away and become less and less and less dominant in your life. Once you've had trauma, it often is the case that if you're in a situation where you are activated or re-triggered again, that PTSD cycle can kick in. But after years of experience, even months of experience, and building your confidence that you can disrupt that cycle, it doesn't have to sabotage your life or control your life.